Alright, this is Flowscape, and I technically already have, well, let me get my mic a little closer. I already have this video uploaded on like an alternate Zydrate plays because I'm not quite out of the closet with certain communities. For those who don't know, I kind of prefer to be a woman if I can do so, but certain life conditions do not allow me to do so at this time. Mostly, I live with a homophobic and racist grandmother who holds monetary power over me. So I have alluded to that in other Let's Plays. I think the first time I mentioned it was in one of my Black Flag videos before I kind of had a software upgrade, so those games looked a little janky. But now I mention that because this is designed with Conan Exiles in mind, where I take part in role-playing communities, and some of them of the erotic nature, because that is the only way I can express femininity and write female characters and stuff like that. And this is actually the birthplace of one of those characters, and I will be talking about that as well as my design choices with this area. Now, my character is a Dafari. In the current server I'm role-playing on, she is an orc, and orcs don't really exist in the Conan universe, but I have a whole, 7-page story written about why that she would exist like that. Mostly that she's more like a golem, essentially. She's not like a traditional fantasy orc. She's more like a homunculi, like a fusion of like necromancy and different bodies put together and stuff like that. And in fact, she was born over here, and I'll show you that. And I'm going to explain the jankiness. This is not your video quality. It's not mine. It's actually because I have so much goddamn greenery in this. And I did that on purpose because I wanted this to look like an actual jungle, and I wanted to explain the Darfar region. Let me slow the thing down a little bit. Whoop. The Darfar region is essentially prehistory Africa, and it flanks a massive jungle. It flanks a jungle while also being part of a desert area. I just learned, I wish I knew these buttons before. Q and E, ham. Okay, this is a visual glitch from loading saved files. A lot of the clutter that you will place kind of start floating around. This will happen with like rocks and leaves and she cells. There's not much I can do about that unless I just start erasing everything, and that's going to be a lot of work. And I've technically already done the fly around video of this on my alternate account, so I'm not really going to work on that right now. This map is done, essentially. But this is the birthplace of my character on Conan Exiles. If I ever play her on other servers that don't allow for her to be an orc or a green skin, like if they don't have the quality of life mod, I can very easily just make her dark skinned and just do the same character. She won't have any tusks or green skin, or everything else about her works. But this is essentially her birthplace, right here in the Darfar Ghazal region, which is right under a jungle. So that's her birthplace. Now, the Conan universe does have plenty of magic, and that was exhibited in the very first movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. There was actual magic. There were creatures because the Conan universe codified the sword and sorcery genre. So things like this are not out of place necessarily, especially when I think Conan Exile is semi-canon. But this Flowscape is sort of used as like a dungeon master tool for some people. So having little creatures like that are pretty cool to have. And I have another one over here, and I'll just do a little flyby. The ambient sound is coming from the game itself. Now, this actually has less greenery than I want. Like, this entire beachfront could do with more grass, but it's already getting laggy enough. Because I do the same thing I did in Creeper World 3. Alright. So, I go max size with my maps, and then I just kind of fill in as I go, which is a kind of a mistake because I get a little too ambitious, and the cost of that is that it gets a little jagged. So you get smoother when I'm not looking at the forest. But I got this guy over here with more of the stick visual glitches. I'm being distracted by my brother who has something that smells like you're eating death. Is that provolone cheese? Okay. Oh, it smells rough, dude. Oh, you can interject if you want. I don't care.
It tastes amazing.
That grass is not supposed to be through that tent. That is a mistake on my part, but you know, whatever. I like to think in my character's story. I showed that already. She was born in that over there, and the village that she actually essentially started working in is over here. I think my camera's going too slow for this, but whatever, we're almost there. I don't know if this art was necessary. I just thought it was cool. I justified it by making like more rock formations around the path. I like to imagine some of that was like a mountain that they just kind of carved out, which is possible, but it takes like decades to do. But this is where she worked. The Darfari actually lived in like mud huts and stuff, but it's not really a resource in this game as of yet. They're planning on putting it on Steam, which I think will allow for workshop support, so eventually other people can upload their own assets. So that'll be cool to see. These little tents are the closest equivalent I can get to Darfari technology, because they were pretty low tech. Even in terms of prehistory, before you had like cannons and everything, even other regions like Aquilonia was basically pre-Roman, so they had like other stuff. I don't know history that well. This is all filler. This was like a mine, essentially. This is probably where my character worked at one point. There's not any kind of mine resource or entrance that you can... I guess I could do it if I tried. I could basically do the same thing I did with the boss over there in that little mountain structure. So I probably could have done something like that, but I made a little bit of gold. There's some like silver sheen stuff here. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Some of this is filler because I couldn't figure out what to do with a lot of the desert area, which is why I kind of left some of this alone. I procedurally generated, and there's a mechanic for that, a bunch like grass growth, which is why this stuff exists. I didn't personally place these. I let these just kind of plop themselves. I did all these slanted trees because I think I read about stuff in desert areas where plants will try to aim towards where the water is. I don't know if that is scientifically sound, but I thought it was kind of a neat idea. I had to manually twist all of them because they're randomly placed. So they're aiming towards the water where the fertility is. I have a lot of neat touches. I wish I could handle putting more graphs on these. But I have these little small touches dotted around the map, like this little encampment. I thought this was cool. Nobody would ever see any of this otherwise. If I was a dungeon master on a like Roll20.net has resources where you can do online groups and stuff, and none of them would probably ever see this. And there's actually fish in the water too. Unless maybe no, it's not over here. There's fish over here. That's another thing I wish I explored more is more animals. I didn't do a lot of animals. There's like wolves and foxes. There's a couple wolves dotted around the various encampments, and there's a fox up towards the path where my character's birthplace. There should be fish over here, but there is. Yeah, there they are. This is weird. They kind of congregate in one little spot when I thought I placed them like all over. See, I remember placing some over here, and you can see there is none. There is a semi-glitch with the saving and loading. As you can see, the floating artifacts, the floating branches and stuff, they obviously were not floating when I placed them. But when you like save and exit the game and then load it later, everything that flies, and I'll actually show an example of that. You can see more of that right here even. Yeah, they're all floating. The clutter just helps make the world look more alive. But here's what it actually does when you do it. You know what I mean? They just kind of flop. And I'm not going to save this, so I can kind of do whatever I want.
Those floating sticks are where the way lines are converging.
Right? I did this little area, I think, as a filler, and I kind of like how it turned out. One thing you can do, and this is something I showed my brother before I started recording, you can't shape the land. You can only go through these presets, and if I click this, it'll fuck the whole thing, so I'm not going to click any of those. I don't even know what it would do. I think it would clear the whole board. I mean, I could reload the save, but that would be a waste of time. And this little grove here, that is actually one of these things. You can make these little presets. Yeah, there it is, right there. It's just differently sized. I resized it. And this actually can help you shape the terrain to your own vision. You can, like, clip these within the land. And I think that's a really cool idea. It'll help you, like, give better shape. Like, I wanted to use these originally, but they were too dark. And you can't change the lighting. You can change the hue of, like, the sand. Like, you can do this. So I can make it look wet. It's raining, y'all. But I couldn't quite get it to the hue of these little land masses. But I don't mind. I really like how this map turned out. But I noticed it was a little too empty. Like, there was too much of the sand. Which, you know, desert, obviously there'd be sand. But like I said, there's a misconception that Africa is just all desert and Iran is all dirt and shit like that. That is not true. They're actually very fertile lands. There's a lot there. I mean, yeah, there's desert and shit, but obviously, I'm not denying that. See, I had this little forestry camp, and that tree should not be in the middle of that tent. I don't know how that came to be. And see, all of those were just on the ground in front of there, and I made like a little forestry camp. Like, this little encampment was the ones chopping down the trees. And I think I wanted to do more with that. Like, I wanted to, like, carve this out a little bit more. Like, I wanted to, like, have full blank areas. Like, this looks like they would be traveling in there, chopping all the trees down. And I would be doing, like, grasslands. I'd be doing, like, grass here and stuff like that. But I never did that. I am not currently the dungeon master of anything specific, so... One thing I also noticed, I'm about to cough, I apologize. Oh, excuse me. Is originally, the whole thing was full desert, but you can actually give it a sort of mask, that's what it's called here, and give the terrain some life to it, as well as you can change what the riverbed looks like. For the ground 2, I gave it a little more of a rocky texture, and that's when I started plopping all these rocks and stuff. I kind of missed the spot right there. The texture is slightly different, so I just figured, why not rocks? Again, I'm not a geologist. I don't know how accurate any of that is to real-life terrain. And even one thing I noticed, and this is especially prevalent in Conan Exiles itself, is their shorelines are usually pretty clear of greenery. Like, shorelines, and I'll erase this because I'm not going to save it. The shorelines in Conan Exiles look more like this. Like, there's nothing on the immediate thing. And I feel like if I wanted to stay true to Conan Exiles, I would probably do something more like that and do something with the shore. Like, it looked more like that. Clearing this area reminded me of another little special spot I had, and I don't remember where it was. It was another grove-like area. I think I remember erasing all of these trees in the water. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I cleared this already. Oh well. I made this little grove in one of the water areas where there's a lot of mushrooms and like special flowers and stuff, and I thought it was really cool. I think it's over here. But I really like this game. It's very relaxing. Yep, here it is. Yeah. Again, this is stuff nobody would ever see normally, and it's missing the mushrooms, and the tiling is off. See, this is what I did because when you have such a large map, you can do this. The tiling, you can set it to like zoom in or zoomed out, and I actually had it more like right here. And again, that's a product of the funky save file system. And there used to be mushrooms here. I actually did mushrooms and sticks and stuff here, and they didn't save that. So that's weird. So as you can see, like now the desert has more details since I did that. Because when you max it out, it might look good on smaller maps, but this does not look good. It looks like the textures are still loading. But as you zoom out, it becomes more and more crisp. The problem with that, and this is actually why I had to feel like I had to clutter the map some, and I'm going to show you what I mean here. If you look really hard, you can see the squares of the tiles, and I'll actually draw it. Let's make this instant. Let's make these big enough. Okay. Whoa, 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 whoa. Too big, too big. You can see them right like this. You can see the creases. You see them? You can see all the creases of the tiles. And that's actually one of the reasons I gave these little little rock area masks. And I think I can blow up my little cursor. Okay. Yeah, you can see the blue. Like, this is why I added this. All these. Because originally it was full desert everywhere. But as you zoom out, you can see all, like, the tile there, tile there, tile there. You can see the perfect squares. Which is why when you do big maps like this, you have to do something like that. See, it makes it smaller and smaller now. This actually looks pretty good. Like the creases become a little less apparent, but when you actually get down on ground level, it looks worse. Actually, that doesn't look too bad. Let's go all the way out. See, that looks awful. I hate that. I hate that a lot. But even just a little bit, it looks a little more natural. But I think I maxed it out on the original map. But yeah, that is my rendition of Darfar in the Conan universe. The Ghazal region, which flanks a forest. And I imagine this is north, right over in that direction, because on the Darfar map, the Black Kingdoms, which is a massive forest, is on the southern region, so... Sorry, excuse me. So I like to imagine this whole forestry area is the entrance to... one of the many entrances to the whole forest area. And I think that's a cool idea. And the reason I did this looks a little out of place. That's one thing I was going to mention, yeah. This whole wall of trees looks out of place is because when I was doing the initial recording of Flyover, when I got to my character's birthplace, I'll show you what we saw, and it was immersion breaking in its own right. Now, there were more trees than that the eraser kind of took out the whole thing. There were trees behind it, but you saw that whole blue horizon, like you saw this, and it looked pretty bad. I erased the building. a little bit of a designer spoiler. There's not actually anything in this building except for some campfires to give it some lighting. Let me slow down the camera a little bit. Because when I do the flyover in the original video, I kind of hit to the side here, and see there were windows. I can't undo that on all that on erasure. That is unfortunate. But there were windows right around where my blue is showing. There were windows on the wall there, and that lighting showed through. There's not actually anything in here. Presumably, you could put some like barrels and stuff and make it look like an actual interior, but you know, whatever. So I accidentally erased that building. Oops. But that's the reason I had that really weird wall of trees. But it also kind of checks out because it's as big as the map I can get. So that is the entrance to the proper forest, where forests are big, man. Like, there's a lot of shit in there. Like, let's max this out. See? Yeah. That's a fucking forest. So that's probably what the trees would look like when humans aren't fucking with it. Not chopping them down and all that, and good fertile land. I just made this as small as it is because when you get to the ground level, like, those are massive. Those are very massive. But when you actually get, like, you're standing on the dirt, those are huge, but this is plenty. This is plenty large for a forest. And that's what I really like about this map. And it's just so goddamn pretty to look at. Clear all that garbage. There we go. I just like it. I like this a lot. In my next video of Flowscape, I might actually start building another map similar to this from the ground up. And I'm probably not going to focus too much on encampments and stuff. But I may have some ambient music playing in the background. I may not even talk that much during it. But I'm talking so much on this one because this is a full, complete idea. This took, I want to say, roughly 5 hours to do. So, yeah. If I were a dungeon master in the Conan universe, I would pretty much screenshot this right here and have a bunch of notations. Like, you see my little blue thing? I would name this camp. I would put a notation that there's a end boss right around there in that blue area. There's my character's birthplace. I'd fix those trees up. I'd probably put a couple like gold things around the little islands here. There's an encampment here, forestry camp, civilian camp, grove. There's another boss over there, sort of golem type thing. I don't even know what that one would be called. One more thing I'll show you, and this is something I want to employ in a future build. But yeah, there's actual dragons you can place. I kind of want to do a Skyrim map, so my next idea is probably going to be a snowy temperate forest type thing. And they're only this big because I have this slider way up, but they don't actually have to be that big. Yeah. So there are dragons. There's the end. There's a skeletons you can have. And there's a sort of like ogre type thing. Yeah, that's really cool. And they animate. They start setting stuff on fire. Well, they don't set stuff on fire, but they have like a fire breath attack type thing. If I let them chill out for a minute. Yeah, he does it immediately. Oh, he's setting over. That's really well placed, actually. And you can futz with their size and turn them around and all that. So, Flowscape. You can get it online somewhere. I might put a link in the description. I think I'll have to Google it because I don't know exactly. It is currently $10. They are working on getting it on Steam, which will eventually allow for workshop support. Like I mentioned that earlier. $10 is not too bad. I already have something to the tune of 10 or 12 hours played on this across various maps. So it's really cool. If you're a dungeon master online, like Roll20.net or other platforms, this is a great resource to have. You probably don't have to go as crazy as I did. Like I went max the size. You probably don't have to do all that. Yeah. Thanks for joining me. Toodles.